Hi, I'm Alan Doederlein with the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, and I'm talking today with Leah Nakamura, who's a leader in our DBSA Arlington Heights, Illinois chapter. We're talking today about medication and side effects. Leah, thank you for being with us.
Sure, thanks.
So, I think before we jump into the conversation about side effects, we should talk a bit about your relationship with your clinician. What kind of a relationship with your doctors and other clinicians have you found to be the most helpful?
I like to think of my psychiatrist and my psychologist and my internist too as members of my support team who help me in my recovery journey. It takes communication, and I think it takes a lot of honesty on everyone's part.
Talk about that honesty. What might be some barriers to honesty in a visit with a doctor?
You might be embarrassed or shy to bring something up. You may not be as honest as you could. You may take too much time to bring up an issue that needs to be handled right away.
What are some of the side effects that you, or maybe people you've talked with in your support groups, have experienced with medications for bipolar disorder?
Double vision was really severe until a psychiatric nurse pointed out that I didn't have to take all of my medication all at once first thing in the morning. And so we spread it out throughout the day, and it was a miracle. I didn't have the double vision at all. Drowsiness is an issue that's a problem for a lot of people in our support group. Somebody had a really original idea, and that was to set the alarm at about 4 o'clock in the morning, take their medication, and then go back to sleep for 2 hours until that drowsiness wore off. Then get up and go about your day.
A frequent issue, a frequent side effect for people taking medication for bipolar disorder is weight gain. What are some ways you deal with that side effect?
In my support group, we discuss this probably on a weekly basis. What can we do? We've talked about exercise and how to increase the exercise that's in our daily plan. And one of those ways that people talk about is pets. Pets get us in and out more often because they need our care. So we've talked about maybe not being able to own a pet, but working at a shelter where exercise is important for a pet. We've talked about making our plates smaller so that our food looks like more than what it is. We've talked about eating with different utensils. Chopsticks are great if you're not good with chopsticks. They work well when you're trying to manage your weight. Using a salad fork rather than a dinner fork. Sometimes diets that we go on are not too helpful because we'll lose weight quickly, and then when the diet is over, we'll put the weight back on, plus a few pounds. But it's important to stay on weight gain because diabetes is such a risk for us with different medications that we're on.
Great. Now, what are some techniques for remembering what's transpired between appointments?
I use a mood chart or a personal calendar. There's a nice one that's put out by DBSA that's very helpful. Because when you go in for your appointment and your doctor says to you, "So how have you been?" most of the time, if you don't have those tools, you're going to answer how you've been in the last 3 to 5 days. You're going to forget that you've had a side effect. You're going to forget that you've had difficulty sleeping. You're going to forget some important items that your clinician needs to know to help you. One of my doctors has asked me to call every week with just a quick phone call. I'm doing well, I'm not doing well, and why, when I'm going through a particularly difficult time.
Something people wonder about when they begin taking medication is, am I going to have to take this for the rest of my life? Have you thought about that, Leah? Is that something you've confronted?
At the beginning, when I was told I had bipolar disorder, I didn't know what bipolar disorder was 10 years ago. I guess it wasn't a hot topic then, it's what it is now. But I really had no idea what to expect. And one of those expectations that was put on me was that I would need to take medication to battle this, to stay on my game for the rest of my life. It really bothered me. It wasn't that I was that young to have to start taking medication, but just this concept that I was going to need this to stay stable. I came to the conclusion that there was a 25-year-old student that I had met who had diabetes. And I said to him when he was first diagnosed, "Oh, doesn't this really bother you to have to take insulin?" He said, "No, it's going to help me stay alive and stay functional." And I thought, if a 25-year-old can say that with that much grace, then what's my problem?
How do you weigh the pros and cons of taking a medication?
Generally, the pros and cons come to me from my psychiatrist. And then there's the sheet that comes from the pharmacist. And then, of course, I go home and check on the computer, not believing everything I see on the computer, because it seems to me that people often put up the very worst case scenario on the computer, and that may or may not be my experience of that drug, because we're all very different human beings and we all have very different side effects. Your support group can be very helpful, but at the end it's your responsibility to report troublesome side effects to your clinician.
How do you stick with it and stay on the medication so you can see the benefit, and if the benefit outweighs those side effects?
Well, that's a good question. You need to have somebody behind you rooting for you, letting you know that this will be worth what you're going through. And that's difficult because in the beginning the side effects can be there before there's any benefit. Your support group can help you remember that. People on your support team, like your family members or your friends, can help you remember that. People who've gone through the same side effects before from that drug can help you to kind of tally-ho and go for it. But at the end, you need to decide whether or not you can manage these side effects. If it's a troublesome side effect and you're still having great difficulty with it, you need to let your clinician know how it's going for you, because they are not mind readers. They need to know how difficult this is for you. If it's beyond your bearing, then it may be time to look at something else.
Do you have any practical tips or suggestions for people who are dealing with side effects and need to stick with their medication regimen?
Think of why you're taking the medication. Be real serious about it. I think about my family members when I take my medication. The medication is expensive. It's difficult to haul around anytime I make a trip, and I travel extensively. So I need to know why I get up in the morning and take my medication. And I do that for my family because I'm better to live with on the medication than I am without the medication. You may have another reason that you can find, but you need to be honest with yourself and know why you're going to take this medication.
Leah, thank you so much for your time today and your great insights on medication, side effects, and bipolar disorder. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for asking.